There's three main types of brokerage relationships that exist in Florida. And based on the brokerage relationship it is that you choose to work with your client with, you're going to have different duties that are associated with each one. So let's first talk about the no brokerage relationship. And this is a topic, this whole kind of brokerage relationship thing. The laws in Florida are fairly different, usually the opposite of what it is in a lot of other states, for which is the default type of relationship in Florida. It's not the no brokerage. We're going to get to the default relationship in Florida, but that's where we see a lot of people that have gotten a license in another state and then they're coming to Florida, and it's almost like you're relearning something a completely different way, which can make it a little bit confusing, but it is completely doable once you get your head wrapped around this. And that's why we're doing this video today. So not only today that you guys can get a clearer understanding of this, but whenever it is that you need to go back, get a little refresher on brokerage relationships, whoever you may be watching this, maybe 10 years from now, this video, if YouTube's even still a thing, and we'll still have this video up somewhere 10 years from now. And you're watching about brokerage relationships, because these laws really don't change for the most part. But since the beginning, Florida's been fairly different compared to a lot of other states. But let's first talk about the no brokerage relationship. So despite the name of no brokerage, a lot of people, they think of this word brokerage as a place, as a company, as an organization. And in the real estate industry, that's what we usually call them. We call them brokerages, a brokerage office. But we're talking about a place. Now, for the concepts of not only the exam, but really the whole concept of what we do as an industry, you shouldn't think of that word brokerage as a noun, as a thing, as a place, as a person. It can be, but the way it is that you need to think about brokerage is what that brokerage does, which is brokering deal, providing brokerage services. And brokerage refers to taking buyers and sellers and bringing them together. Why do we need to be there to facilitate bringing together buyers and sellers? What's the purpose it is that we serve to bring these together? Why can't they just come together on their own? You would think as much money as it costs to use a real estate professional, and as long as this trade has been around, that they would have figured out how to eliminate us by now. But we possess a very specific set of skills to bring together two opposing parties. So we have what's called an arm's length transaction. This is another good term to know out of this here. An arm's length transaction, this applies almost any time it is that you buy something. I'm sure a lot of you guys watching, you've probably maybe been skeptical when you went out and bought something before. You're thinking, does it really do what it says it does? Will it really help me lose weight? Will it really make me money? Will it really look as good as it does in the commercials? All this as seen on TV stuff where you're like, wow, this piece of duct tape will change your life. You'll be able to hold your house together with this special super high quality duct tape. And you look at that and you see, well, I don't know if I believe that about that duct tape. So the reason why we're so skeptical as buyers is because of these arm's length transactions. As a buyer, what we're trying to do is we're trying to protect our money. We're trying to make sure not only that we don't overpay, but sometimes we're just trying to get the lowest price possible. And that's the general mentality of a buyer, that we're trying to get a price that's the lowest price possible. We wouldn't want to overpay for anything. I'm sure sometimes, and if it's convenient or if the service is better, we might overpay for something. But if we've got comparable items, why would we ever overpay for something? So that's the mindset of the buyer. Now, moving on to the mindset of the seller, they have the complete opposite thinking. They're not thinking of, what's the lowest price I could sell for? No, they're not thinking of going down. They're thinking of going up. They're like, what's the highest price that I could sell for? What's the most money I could get out of this property? What's the highest I could get somebody to pay? What's the best value I can receive? So what happens is your seller's going this way with the buyer's going this way, and we have this arm's length transaction. And being as large of transactions as real estate transactions are, that's the importance of having somebody like us, a real estate professional, involved in there, because we're helping broker the deal. We're helping bring together the buyers and the sellers. Get the seller down, bring the buyer up, maybe just getting the buyer up if the seller won't budge, or maybe just getting the seller down if the buyer won't budge, depending on the situation, and making it a win-win situation for all parties involved. And sometimes there's just more than one of us involved. Maybe there's multiple brokerage offices representing both the buyer and the seller independently. But we're all there. Our purpose is to get that meeting of the minds, as it's called in contract law. The mutual assent, another term for it. Offer and acceptance is what we might also call that. So brokerage refers to exactly that. We're brokering the deal. Look, we're not the seller of the property, and neither are we the buyer. It's not our property that we're selling. It's not our property that we're buying. We're assisting a buyer in buying a property. We're assisting the seller in selling their property. It's not our property. We're just the middleman brokering the deal. So that'll really help you understand why this is called what it is, no brokerage. And another phrase for this is also known as non-representation. So non-representation, and this one usually makes a little bit more sense. And you could see it in the real world. Usually I think the documents are usually referred to as non-representation disclosures, but they could also be called no brokerage disclosures as well. They mean the exact same thing. We're not representing the client. We're not brokering the deal. There is a brokerage company being used, but that brokerage company is not brokering the deal. So that's what it refers to when we say no brokerage, that we're not trying to bring together the buyers and the sellers. So where do we use this brokerage relationship transaction? Now there's only 3 duties here. We're going to talk about what these 3 duties are, but when would we use these 3 duties? What case would it be where we're not going to broker the deal? So one example you might see where you might use a no brokerage relationship. So let's say, and you might have seen these before, these flat rate fee MLS companies out there that, let's say, they charge you $500, which if you're only paying $500 for a service compared to, let's say it's a 6% commission on a $100,000 property, only a $100,000 property, that would be $6,000. So paying only $500 is a significant discount compared to $6,000. So if you're charging so much less money, what is it that these flat rate brokers actually do? Well, a lot of times the only thing it is that they're doing, and the reason why people want to pay them that $500 gladly, is to put the property in the MLS. They're convinced that they're doing it on their own, but there's one tool it is that we have in our tool belt that's an extremely powerful tool which results in most of the sales in the real estate industry, and that's the multiple listing service, the MLS. So they might be paying us maybe $500 to get the property in the MLS, but we're like, hey, for $500, that's all we're going to do for you. We're not doing anything else. We're not going to do everything we would normally do, that we would charge 6% or $6,000 or $18,000 or however much money it is depending on the price of the property, if you're only paying $500. So that might be where we use a no brokerage or non-representation agreement with that particular client. We say, yeah, we're going to charge you $500, and here's some contracts and forms we have about what it is we're going to do for you. Oh, and also here is the no your deal. A lot of times what happens with these flat rate fee listings is the property does go into the MLS. It does get the exposure that the MLS does offer, but they're directed directly to the seller. If they want to look at the property, contact the seller. If they want to make an offer on the property, all right, we'll contact the seller, because we're not brokering the deal. We're not a middleman, and that's what no brokerage refers to. So that's one example of where you might use a no brokerage relationship. And now this acronym of ADD, these are the 3 core duties that we have in all brokerage relationships. These are the only 3 duties that we have in the no brokerage relationship. So this is all it is, but we never get less than these 3 duties. And the first one is called account for all funds. So account for all funds is pretty self-explanatory. It means that all money is accounted for. That if there's some sort of payment for something, that gets recorded appropriately, usually on the closing disclosure. If there's some sort of referral fee, or if there's some sort of commission splitting or anything like that, that gets recorded on the closing disclosure. That we're not basically kind of taking some backroom deal, getting some cash in a manila envelope and, pretending like that didn't happen. That would be failure to account for all funds. So really, that one's pretty simple. It just means any sort of money needs to be accounted for. And if you're entrusted with some money, maybe an escrow deposit, if you've been entrusted with an escrow deposit, that you're appropriately accounting for that escrow money, and you're not going and spending that escrow money or using that escrow money to pay commission, that escrow money is sitting in the appropriate escrow account, untouched, waiting for it to be utilized for its intended purpose. So that's what account for all funds means. Pretty straightforward there. The second one is also fairly straightforward, and this is deal honestly and fairly. So with this one, there's not really much of a specific definition. The first one here, account for all funds, very simple, specific definition. All money needs to be tracked and accounted for. Whereas deal honestly and fairly, this we're getting a little bit more broad in what this could apply to. This could apply in a lot of situations where you could be deemed not dealing honestly and fairly. Now, for your real estate exams, you're typically not interpreting what dealing honestly and fairly means. Now, if you see something, a scenario maybe that they're giving you, and you're like, oh, well, that's not an honest thing to do, that's not a fair thing to do, so maybe the answer would be failure to deal honestly and fairly. But that also might just be a question of which one of the following would be a no brokerage relationship duty. And that would be deal honestly and fairly. And again, this does depend on a case-by-case situation. You got to have maybe some sort of particular scenario that you're looking at here, and then you just kind of know you have that moral compass inside of you. And this is something that is very difficult to teach, and that's why it's not a big component of the exam. And ethics isn't a big component of the exam, really any component of the exam. The pre-licensing course as well as the state exam are designed to teach you and test you on the law, not what's ethical. Now, when you go to do continuing education and post-licensing, that's where ethics start to get more involved. When you join the Association of Realtors, that's where you go through ethics training. But for the initial pre-licensing course, their number one concern is making sure that you know what the law is. And it is the law. It is a legal obligation in the no brokerage relationship in Florida to deal honestly and fairly, as it is in all relationships, because these three duties, which are the only three duties in no brokerage, apply in all three relationships. Now, our final one is disclose material defects. So you might be asking, well, what is a material defect and why do we have to disclose material defects? So there's some case law that basically says if a seller knows there's something wrong with the property, they're required legally to disclose what is wrong with the property. And this is something rampant in the real estate world, that disclosures are not made, that people are selling properties knowing that there's an issue with the property and not disclosing it to the prospective purchaser, which that opens you up for liability for a fraud lawsuit where you could get sued for what those damages are if they could prove that you did know about whatever that material defect was. So what are these material defects? And we just talked earlier about why they're so important that we disclose them, not only because it's the law, but because we could severely injure, both financially and physically, our clients with this here. So material defects are anything that, the simple way, and this is a little bit of an oversimplification, but it works in almost every case, is something broken with the property that's going to cost money to fix. Even if it's something just very minuscule. Cracks in the floor, for example. So crack in the floor, it's just a little hairline crack. It's nothing. What if you might not even see the crack? You can't even see the crack, but there's a crack in the floor. Well, that crack, even if it's just a microscopic crack that you can't even see, allows radon gas to seep into the property, and that could kill people. And when people die, that's the biggest lawsuits that are out there, and let alone people are dying, and we don't want that, or at least not be liable and complicit in them dying. So that's why we make radon gas disclosures and why we recommend radon gas inspections, among all these other hazards that could exist in a property. But something just as simple as a small little hairline crack in a tile. Oh, well, if that's a crack into the foundation, that could open up for radon gas. That's dangerous. You should have that tested for. I highly recommend that you get an inspection. Very simple way to make sure we disclose that material defect. You might think that little crack in the floor, oh, that's nothing. but what it is that we don't know, and there's still so many things about it. It seems like every day there's some sort of new environmental hazard that, could kill people, that's dangerous, that could cause damages. And so often this has happened in history before. We have the lead-based paint stuff. Lead was the go-to substance that was used in paint, that was used in children's toys, that was burned in our gasoline, and it was everywhere. And then we started to find out, this lead, it's kind of dangerous. It's not really that good for us. And they did some research, and I remember there's some documentary on Netflix talking about this, of the guy that discovered the dangers of lead. And he was just basically laughed out of existence. And they were, despite all the facts and findings he had, his findings were pushed down because lead was such a big part of everyone's life, and we didn't want to believe that it was dangerous. But that just kind of shows you, we're kind of seeing that today with plastics. Plastics are the lead of the 21st century. That we're seeing, more and more things every day about, plastics and BPAs and all this other stuff that could go in there. Even water. Water might not always be safe for you. Water is one of our number one needs, and the water coming out of the tap might not be safe, might not be okay to drink. And this isn't so much just worrying about the legal liability, but we don't want to say something is an issue. Take out the legal liability and financial consequences altogether, and if you're truly in this business to make people's lives better, you don't want to tell somebody a lie that, that crack in the floor is nothing, when it turns out there's a sinkhole, and one night that they wake up and their bed's all of a sudden like 10 feet underground because that sinkhole finally opened up on it. And again, we take away that financial consequence because, believe me, there could be a financial consequence there if you get sued over something like that. But then just on your conscience alone, do you feel okay about telling people, don't worry about that crack, it's nothing, and then finding out they maybe died because they fell into a sinkhole? So not only is it the ethical thing to do, it's also the law to disclose these material defects. Now look, we don't need to know whether or not that's going to be a sinkhole, but what we do need to know, what our legal obligation to do is. And this is really all that we do know, because we're not experts in soil and foundations and things like that, but we know a crack when we see one, and that's what we have to disclose. That's what disclosing material defects is all about. A crack, or maybe there's some sort of leak. We see maybe a water stain on the ceiling. We're like, hey, look at that water stain up there. And especially as a new agent, you might be hesitant to disclose every last problem with the property. And the reason why you think that is because, yes, this is a sales business, and if we don't sell any houses, we don't get paid any money. So you might be worried that, if I tell them about this crack in the floor, it's nothing, it's probably nothing, it's nothing to worry about, because if I tell them about it, they'll make a big deal about it, and it'll blow the deal. Probably not going to blow the deal. Even all these things, it's not something as to whether or not they do or do not want to buy it. That's like a entry-level real estate 101. Oh, you don't like the house? All right, well, let's not buy it. Oh, you don't like that inspection? Okay, well, let's go find another one. No. We renegotiate now. Oh, yeah, I do see that, there's that crack there, but you know what? We'll get that inspected, find out how much of an issue that really is, and if anything, we could try to get some money knocked off the price if you guys still really want this house. I wouldn't want something like that, which might cost some money to fix, but we'll get that inspected and find out the details. I wouldn't want something like that to if that's the only problem with this house, I don't want you guys to fall out of love over this house over something that could be fixed for whatever the dollar amount may be. So now notice, and you might think I'm just being vague and broad here when I'm saying that, just because I'm not talking about a specific example, but even dealing in a specific example, you want to be vague, you want to be broad, because it's not your job to know how much it costs to fix that item, what the really extent of that damage may be. That's where we bring in inspectors who are specialized in understanding the foundation of the property, that understand soil, and there's different inspectors for different types of inspections. Just because an air conditioning unit blows cold doesn't mean that that's a great air conditioning and it's in perfect working order. A lot of times air conditioning units, as they age, they start leaking Freon, and Freon is what makes the air cold. So when it leaks all out, the air doesn't get cold anymore. So what you could do with an air conditioning unit to make it blow cold for a couple of days is fill it full of Freon, maybe cost you like $200 or something like that, maybe $300 depending on the size of the air conditioning unit, and that air will blow cold. So just because the air is blowing cold doesn't mean that that's a flawless air conditioning unit. They could have just, pumped it full of Freon so it's blowing cold and people won't think much about it. But if they ask us, what's the condition of the air conditioning unit? We don't want to say, yeah, it's blowing cold, must be good. because we just made a misrepresentation that could open us up for liability, because as a professional in the real estate industry, you should know that just because, now you don't need to know it as the extent that I do, but just because that AC blows cold, just know this. Just because anything seems to work as it does now, we always want to recommend an inspection. Yeah, it is blowing cold, but there might be some other issues going on with this and might be fine, but I would still recommend we get an inspection out here. And yes, the buyer would have to pay for these inspections unless we negotiate the seller to pay for them. And it might cost the buyers a couple $100 doing these inspections. But it's worth that peace of mind to find out, because let's say we do find out there's an issue with the air conditioning unit and the AC tech gives us a quote for a new AC unit because it's at that point where it just needs to be replaced of like $5,000. Well, would you rather get a $5,000 reduction on the price of the property, or save the $500 up front for all the inspections and then now have to pay $500 after you paid full price for the property? No, you spend the few $100, do the inspections, you find out if there are any issues, because if there is an AC that needs replaced, now I've got something that we could go to the seller with and say, hey, look, they still want to do the deal, but look, that AC is done for. We had an inspection done, it needs to be replaced, it's going to cost $5,000 to replace, so they will still buy the property, but we're going to need a $5,000 concession to repair the air conditioning unit. And that's how we negotiate this off of now. So it's not going to blow the deal. And the sooner it is that you understand that these are just points to negotiate off of when we're doing the inspection, the more comfortable it is you're going to be with disclosing material defects. And this isn't going to blow the deal. If anything, it's going to build more trust in you, because they'll see that you're looking out for their needs and their interest and what it is that they're looking to get done. And so that's what and just disclosing material defects, just doing what we're legally supposed to do, goes so far in building that trust in that relationship. Because again, this is something that's rampant in the real estate industry that they've been trying to crack down on, is not disclosing material defects. Because if this isn't disclosed, that leaves the buyer, now after they purchase the property, left hanging, have to pay for the AC. Or, let's do one more example before we go on break here. We've got a minute to go on a break here. And then I've got a question from Gerardo over on Facebook, and we'll go ahead and take that after we get back from the break. But before we go on break, one more example. Let's say they ask you, hey, does the property have any termites? Now, we're thinking, oh, well, this is a block construction home. I looked that up in the MLS before we went here. And we say, oh, no, there's no termites. There's block construction in this home. Is that a misrepresentation? Probably is. Because even though the house is block construction, and this is something that we see a lot, and these are these little kind of myths that exist in real estate. Oh, a block construction home can't have any termites. Yes, they can, because not the entire property is built out of blocks. If you're living in some sort of cave where there's no wood in there whatsoever, maybe you won't have any termites. But anytime there's any wood whatsoever, they're hungry enough, they'll find their way up to the rafters in the roof that's holding the roof up. And yeah, maybe the walls will still be standing, but that roof collapses because of the termite damage. Or maybe the walls dividing the rooms within the house, those often are made out of wood. The cabinets, there could be so many things that are wood in the property. And with a termite inspection, for example, this is why I like to use this as an example, these inspections we get typically done for free. And the reason why is termite companies will do an inspection for free because they want to find termites. So if they do find termites, they're the ones that get to treat it, that get paid to treat the termites in the property. So that's very common that you see something like that. So what our job is, they ask us, hey, are there termites? I don't know of any termites, but we absolutely should get that inspected. I actually know a guy that can do the inspection for free. So something like that, I mean, see how we come across the client. I don't know if there is, and you might be afraid to use those words of I don't know. But look, those are powerful words that make you clear with your client and make them see your transparency. Look, I don't know. If they see that you're trying to BS them and say, oh yeah, don't worry about termites, this is a block home, blah, 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 blah. But if we say, I don't know if there's termites, it is a block construction home, but there is still wood in the property, what I'd recommend that we do, I've got a guy actually who'll do a termite inspection for free. We'll get that done while we're in the inspection period, and if it turns out that there are termites, we could try to negotiate off of that, or we still could back out the deal at that point. Does that sound good to you? Now notice how I really didn't tell them much more about whether or not there's termites, but I gave them the next steps. I gave them the process. I let them know what to do. People are so often, that's why they need us, they don't know what to do. They don't know what the next steps are, and that's why we're so valuable in this process, because we do these transactions again and again and again and again, so we know the steps that should be taken. And even when we're at a crossroads, we can help make sense of doing this one versus doing this one because of our experience, because of what we know might be the next step that occur after this here. So our foresight is what really helps out our clients immensely and makes us worth the value it is that we have. We got a couple questions coming in on Facebook as well as YouTube, so stick with us. We're going to be back in less than 2 minutes. I'm John Carissimo. You're watching Ask the Instructor. If you've been thinking about real estate, look, in this current market, it's hard not to. There's so many opportunities that exist out there for residential real estate, commercial real estate, business brokerage, property management. I mean, it's ridiculous how much opportunity lies from having a real estate license. So look, if you've been thinking about getting a real estate license, I mean, it's minimal cost compared to starting other careers and starting other businesses to get into this. So I urge you to check it out and give it a try. I mean, even if you're just using your license for personal use, you've got huge, immense benefits there. Go to this link. It's licensefl.com. That's licensefl.com. Put that link in the description. It's got your step-by-step guide to get a Florida real estate license. And look, check it out. Give us a call. We're here to answer any questions it is that you have, and go out there and make some money.
Does your current career allow for unlimited income potential? With a career in real estate, the sky is the limit. What you put in is what you get out. Find out more about how you can tap into the unlimited income potential of a career in real estate at tampaschool.com. Did you know that statewide only about 50% of test takers pass their state exam on the first try? At the Tampa School of Real Estate, we've broken down passing class and state exams into 4 simple steps: learning the information, reinforcing the information, testing your knowledge, and being confident and prepared. View the details of the full strategy at passfirsttry.com. That's passfirsttry.com.
Hey, if you're enjoying the show today, which I'm sure you are, be sure to hit like, subscribe, post your comments, share with your friends and family. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. Got a couple questions coming in over on Facebook that I promised we'd take after the break, so let's go and get those knocked out. First one comes in from Gerardo. Thanks for tuning in, Gerardo. He's asking about basically that, he's been thinking about doing real estate, but he's been told that he's impatient. Hey, welcome to the club, my brother. I'm an impatient person as well, but I've learned to be patient. And it is a skill that can be learned. Almost anything is a skill that can be learned, but especially patience. I know firsthand, still to this day, I still find myself with my impatient natures trying to say, okay, I want something right now. Why are we waiting till next week? Let's do this today. But, that's kind of the nature of this business. A lot of people, there will be some people that need to buy a property right now, but then at the same time, there's going to be people that'll take a week or 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years to buy a property. And you just need to prioritize and devote your attention at different levels. Take that kind of impatience that you have and devote that attention to your clients that are actively searching, that are running up on their deadline if they need to buy a house immediately. Those people get all of your attention, and then you just check in every now and then with the people. We're actually doing an episode this Friday on State of Real Estate, kind of about having multiple flows, having multiple clients at the same time. Because if you just have one client at any given point in time, you're going to drive yourself crazy with that impatience. Trust me on that one. But the more things it is that you have going on, the more you're able to spread yourself out. You could focus, when you start feeling impatient and you're trying to get things done right now, you could focus your efforts to the things you need to do right now. And then when you've got some other time, then you can kind of focus on building those relationships with the people that are out and buying or selling their home. So that patience is definitely something, and it's not even really, I would say, a weakness. A lot of people are too patient. They just sit around and wait for everything to happen to them, which that's a lot worse for starting a real estate career if you're just going to sit around and wait for things to happen to you rather than going out and making things happen. So that impatience can actually be quite a strength if it's channeled into the right direction there. But yeah, it definitely will be something you need to grapple with. The first thing is good that you understand that, so now you know how to deal with it. Also want to give a shout out to Saramar. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. I apologize if I'm not. Sorry, I guess it is how it is. Sari, maybe. I don't know. I'm always bad with pronouncing these when I'm reading them off the screen here. But thanks for tuning in over at Align Right Realty. So that office, congrats. Thank you guys for tuning in. Welcome to the show. But let's get back into brokerage relationship. So we talked about the no brokerage relationship, which this is what we would use. And the question we get all the time too is, well, when do we use no brokerage relationship? So we have that one example. If we're discounting ourselves and we don't want to have to do all the things we normally do, we could have them sign a no brokerage non-representation agreement, and then we're just having to do these three things. Now in Florida, this is not the norm. So the norm in Florida is not a no brokerage relationship. What's automatically assumed in Florida, and this is one of the things they have changed. They changed it back in 2008. It wasn't that they created a new relationship. They just said, okay, going forward, transaction broker relationships are assumed. You don't have to sign any disclosures for them. This is automatically how you're working with the client. Somebody calls you up and says, hey, I want to go buy a house. You're going to be working with them as a transaction broker unless you sign a disclosure that says otherwise. Now, what is a transaction broker? So this is kind of the next step up in the relationships that we have. Our no brokerage is the least amount of duties. Only those three duties: ADD, account for all funds, deal honestly and fairly, and disclose material defects. So those are the three for the no brokerage relationship. Transaction broker, that's our middle ground. And again, this is what's automatically assumed in Florida, which has a lot more duties in it. And this is what normally happens in Florida. Probably 99% of the time, most transactions are done as a transaction broker relationship. But then we also have the single agency relationship, which we're going to be talking about as well, which has the most amount of duties. So for the transaction broker relationship, we've got the ADD, the account for all funds, deal honestly and fairly, and disclose material defects. Next one we have, though, and there's no acronyms really for this one, so we've got use, skill, care, and diligence. So what is using skill, care, and diligence, and why don't we have to do that when we're in the no brokerage relationship? So if you remember, with the no brokerage relationship, it is not any brokerage. We're not bringing together buyers and sellers. There is a brokerage involved, but there's no representation it is that we're offering. And since we're not representing our clients, we don't have to use skill, care, and diligence in the no brokerage relationship. We do, however, have to use that in the transaction broker relationship. So using skill, care, and diligence now comes into play in the transaction broker, because we need to make sure that when we're supposed to do something for our client, that we're using skill, care, and diligence to get that done. Basically, if we drop the ball on something, it could be our fault for dropping the ball, and that could ultimately damage our clients, which they could then turn around and sue us over something like that if we did not use skill, care, and diligence. The next one is, let's say, limited confidentiality. There's a couple here. So limited confidentiality, which means not everything is confidential. Most things you're okay to say, but the things that are specific, the way I like to kind of make an analogy for this is, imagine you're playing some sort of poker game. And if you've ever played poker before, you know that regardless of whether you have the best hand in the world or you've got nothing, you want to look like you've got the best hand in the world. Or, maybe just keep a straight face. You're not supposed to show your hand, is the point I'm trying to make here. So with limited confidentiality, we're not showing our hand to any potential. Let's say we're representing the seller. If we're representing the seller and we've got a buyer that wants to make an offer on the property, and they say, oh, you're the listing agent? Well, what's the lowest price that the seller will take? Give us the inside scoop. And we can't say, oh, well, make an offer for this much and you'll be good. No. That's not what we're supposed to use. We'd be breaching our limited confidentiality if we did that. We could say something like, well, the property is listed at $250,000. Unfortunately, I can't tell you if they're willing to accept anything less, the same way that I won't tell them if you tell me you're willing to pay anything higher. So it goes both ways. We protect the seller for limited confidentiality by basically keeping confidential if they're willing to accept a lower price. as well as for the buyer, keeping confidential. And this is another thing that you see go on all the time in the real estate industry, just because a lot of real estate professionals don't know that you're supposed to keep limited confidentiality in transaction broker relationships, which is how most transactions are done in Florida. So submit your highest and best offer might be some verbiage that you've heard before, and that means, can't tell you anything, just submit your highest and best offer. We can't tell them that they're willing to accept a lower price. The seller could have told us the night before, look, I'll take any price on this property. I just need to sell it, get the property sold. And we're like, okay, we'll do. Now the buyer comes along and says, well, what's the lowest price they'll take? Can't say. Submit your highest and best offer, and I'll take it to the seller and see what response they have for you. But I can't tell you if the seller will accept any lower price, just like I won't tell the seller if you're willing to pay any higher price. Now they might go on and say, well, are they willing to negotiate? Submit your highest and best offer. Let's find out. And even if the seller had told us, I'm willing to take lower offers, I'm willing to negotiate, that is confidential unless we have specific written permission to disclose that information. So if we have written permission that says you could tell people that I'm willing to take lower prices on the property, that I'm willing to negotiate, that I'm highly motivated to move, that I'll take this lower price, that's okay if you have written permission. But if you have not have written permission to disclose that information to prospective purchasers, that's confidential. And then the same rule applies for the buyer as well. If we're helping them write the offer, if they say, well, let's make an offer for $240, but we'll go up to as high as $245. Okay, I'm going to tell them that you're going to $240, but I'll keep that $245 secret because that's your legal obligation. That has to be kept secret in the transaction broker relationship. And this is what differs a lot from single agency, which is what occurs automatically in a lot of other states. We're kind of the keeper of all these secrets, some from the seller, some from the buyer, when we end up working with both parties in the transaction. So that's why we have to make sure we maintain that limited confidentiality so we don't injure any party in the process. So we don't tell the buyer that, the seller's willing to take a lower price, and like, oh, really? And then they end up paying less than they would have with the property, and the seller ends up getting less for the property than they would have normally sold the property for had they had a better realtor representing them. So we need to keep those things like that limited confidential. It's not everything. That's why we call it limited confidentiality, because just basic information. Oh, the sellers have kids. Yeah, we could talk about that. Do they have pets? Yeah, we could talk about that. We could talk about basic small talk type of stuff and things like that. That's okay. But when it comes down to their negotiating position, that's where our limited confidentiality kicks in. Hey, I love talking about stuff, but I can't tell you that information. Submit your highest and best offer, and I'll get you an answer from the seller. And that's just, we're performing our professional duty. It's not that we're trying to be tough on them or being difficult. It's illegal. It's the law that says we have to keep that limited confidentiality. Now, getting to talking about offers, that's another duty we have in the transaction broker relationship, is present offers and counter offers. And we'll just say offers timely. In a timely manner is the full definition. So really the full definition of this is present all offers and counter offers. Keyword really all. Should write that in. We'll do that in red because that's super important. Present all offers and counter offers in a timely manner. This is a big one that's also not only important for the exam, but something you see all the time in the real world. Let's say we were holding an open house and we get two offers on a property. One made an offer for full price, one made an offer for, let's say the property is listed at $250,000. One makes an offer for $240,000, the other makes it for the full price of $250,000. Well, we're looking at these here and we're like, well, what's the better offer? Well, the $250,000 is obviously the better offer because it's the higher price, right? And maybe the case, but there's a lot of other factors that play into the offer other than just the price. But we see that higher price, and we see not only are we going to get the seller more money, but we're going to put more money in our pocket because our commission is based off of the price it is that the property sells for. So the higher it sells for, the higher it is that we get paid. So we're like, yeah, the $250,000 is the better offer. And you know what we do? We take this $240,000 offer, we stick it behind our back and say, hey, look, we got an offer today for $250,000. Sounds like a deal, right? Sounds like, this is the one you want to take, right? I mean, it's perfect. It's full price. It's the price you're asking for. I got it for you. Now, if I were standing like this, they'd probably say, well, what's that behind your back? And I'd be, no, don't worry about it. I'd be violating this presenting of all offers and counter offers in a timely manner. So that offer I was holding behind my back, I breached my duty to present all offers and counteroffers in a timely manner. So how I should have handled that situation is, hey, look, we got 2 offers today, a full price offer, which I think that's the one you should take, and this offer here for $240,000, which might be worth considering because of this, and that with the offer here, but overall I still think the $250,000 offer is the better offer. Which one do you want to choose? And it's their decision. That's what's important here. It's the whoever the buyer or seller is that we're presenting this offer to, it's their decision as to which offer they want to take. When we hold that offer behind our back, we're making the decision that, this offer isn't good enough for you. I'm just going to give you this offer here. Now, we can get written permission to not accept any offers that are below a certain point or anything like that, to decline any offers or refuse any offers that are below a certain dollar amount or anything like that, but unless you got something like that in writing in advance, you're not going to have that, and any offers have to be presented, including verbal offers as well. So verbal offers would also have to be presented. Even though we need it in writing to have a contract, the verbal offer is still something that does need to be presented to our buyer, seller, whoever it is that we're presenting the offers to. And, the whole in a timely manner thing, there's no specific expiration date for offers. Usually in the real world, you'll see like 3 days, but it's specified in the offer. You put on the offer how long the offer is good for, that this offer is good until this date at this time. And we just need to make sure we get that presented before then. And this usually is a non-issue, because if we're being lazy, if we're not being impatient like Gerardo, and this is where this would be good for you to be impatient, because you want to get this offer to your client right away, because once they accept this offer, it becomes a contract and they're locked in. Every second that goes by that we're just, sitting there with this offer and saying, I probably should present this to our seller, but, there's this football game on TV. I should probably watch that first. Or, look, I just got a Facebook notification. Let me go through here. No, you want to get these offers to them as soon as possible, because as every second that goes by, what do people do when they buy something, especially when they make the biggest purchase of their lives, maybe a bigger purchase than they've ever made before? A lot of times they have buyer's remorse. Or they're still looking because they want to make sure they're making a good deal. Or especially if they just made an offer, they don't know if that offer is going to be accepted, so they're still looking at other properties. They're checking out the competition that's out there, and that offer can be withdrawn until it's been accepted. So that's usually why this is a non-issue to present all offers and counteroffers in a timely manner, because if we sit on these offers, we're losing out on something much more important, which is possibly our commission, as well as the seller for the buyer for the seller. So we need to present these offers as soon as possible, because the more it is that we sit on them, the more chance we give them to withdraw the offer. Once it's been accepted and turned to a contract, that's where we're a little bit more locked in. There's still some ways out of most contracts, typically, with the right clauses, the right wording that's in there. There's still ways to get out of a contract. But if it's just a basic contract, once that contract is in writing and signed, and if it just says, I'm buying your house for this much, we're locked in. And there's no way out of that contract there. Now, again, in the real world, you have all these clauses and little contingencies that you stick in there, like for financing and inspections and things like that, to make sure that the property is suitable for the buyer, and that they could get out of the contract without, losing out on their deposits and all kinds of things like that, not being legally implicated. But that's presenting offers and counteroffers in a timely manner. One more duty that we need to talk about here, and this is mutually agreed additional duties. So we've got the mutually agreed additional duties. That is our last duty that we have in the transaction broker relationship. And this might be why we're holding an open house, because we offered to hold an open house and they agreed. They said, yes, that sounds like a great idea. I do want you to hold an open house. Now it's a mutually agreed duty. Or maybe they asked us to hold an open house and I say, you know what, I will hold an open house for you. So now we've agreed on this. But if they asked us to hold the open house and we say, no, I don't do open houses, that's not a mutually agreed duty, and we have no obligation to do an open house in a transaction broker relationship. So it's only where it's mutually agreed, not where they're just giving us orders, which is going to be something that's different with the single agent relationship. And that's what we're going to talk about with the final segment of the show, the single agent relationship, specifically the 4 exclusives to the single agent relationship. We've got another acronym for that, so stick with us. I'm John Chrismo. You're watching Ask the Instructor. Hey, so if you're thinking about starting a real estate career, it could feel a little overwhelming sometimes. Look, that's completely understandable. That's why we're here to help. If you haven't already, check out our Success Center, tampaschool.com/success, or if you don't even know where to begin, give us a call. We'd love to help you out. We've got advisors standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way it is that we can. Our phone number is 813-928-0106. Again, that's 813-928-0106. Give us a call. We're the Tampa School of Real Estate.
Do you want a career that allows you to be in control? With a career in real estate, you'll get to call the shots. Whether you're looking at starting part-time or want to become the next top agent, a career in real estate makes it possible. Find out what it takes at tampaschool.com. Do you want to incorporate studying for your real estate exams into your busy schedule? Now you can review the key topics you need to know to pass your class and state exams with our MP3 audio review. Simply pop in your headphones or connect to your car to reinforce crucial information while you exercise or drive. Listen to the first unit for free at mp3audioreview.com. That's mp3audioreview.com.
Are you thinking about a career in real estate? Hey, I'm John Chrisma with the Tampa School of Real Estate, and we've helped thousands of people just like you obtain their real estate license. If you're thinking about a career in real estate, give us a call. The phone number is 813-928-0106. Our advisors are standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way they can. Hey, if you're enjoying the show today, which I'm sure you are, be sure to hit like, subscribe, post your comments, share with your friends and family. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. I'm John Chrismo, and every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Time, we come to you live to talk about the technical side of the real estate industry. And today, we're talking about brokerage relationships, which every time you work with a client, you have a brokerage relationship with them. We were just talking about the transaction broker relationship, and in the transaction broker relationship, we're there to get the transaction done. We've got these duties: the ADD, account for all funds, deal honestly and fairly, and disclose material defects, as well as using skill, care, and diligence, limited confidentiality, presenting all offers and counteroffers in a timely manner, and then mutually agreed additional duties. Now, moving into the single agency relationship. So this one incurs the most amount of duties, and that transaction broker relationship, again, that we were just talking about, that's what's automatically assumed in Florida. The single agent relationship is a bit of an upgrade in terms of what we have to do for the client, what we're required by law to do for the client in the state of Florida, because in Florida, the transaction broker relationship is what's automatically assumed by law. So with the single agent relationship, we've got the ADD, account, deal, and disclose. So account for all funds, deal honestly and fairly, disclose material defects. We also have what we had talked about from the transaction broker relationship. We're going to revive two of those. So skill, care, and diligence. We still got to use skill, care, and diligence. But then on top of the skill, care, and diligence, we still also have to present offers. Present all offers. Let's not drop the all in there because that's one of the most important parts. Present all offers and counteroffers in a timely manner. But now with the single agent relationship, we've got 4 exclusives, which form this acronym of COLD, C-O-L-D. You notice we did not revive limited confidentiality. And the reason why we don't have limited confidentiality here is because for all 4 of these, it's all full, and the C stands for confidentiality. So we've got full confidentiality. Anything that we know about our client is confidential. We do not disclose any information. They ask us, the seller of kids, not at liberty to say. Where's the seller moving to? Not at liberty to say. Seller of pets, not at liberty to say. So everything is fully confidential. Now, transaction, broker relationship, all those names, all those questions we had there, as long as we're not breaching our limited confidentiality and disclosing things that affect their negotiation position, they can be disclosed. But single agency, everything's confidential now. You'll also notice that we did not have mutually agreed additional duties because we dropped the mutual here. We dropped the mutually agreed part of this. We just have additional duties. We have obedience. That's what the O stands for, full obedience for anything it is that they ask us to do. So we get asked to hold an open house every weekend till the property sells, and it's not so much that they're asking us to do it, they're telling us to do it, because anything that they tell us to do, we have to be obedient. They say, I want an open house done every weekend. All right, well, let me get my open house clothes on. Got to do the open houses. If they ask us, hey, can you go make 10,000 flyers and go pass them out all over town? Obedience says we've got to do what they ask. Now, if they do ask something such as, hey, go vandalize that house down the street there. Their house looks too nice and no one's going to want to buy ours with that house down the street there. That one looks too nice. We don't have to follow that because they're asking us to do something illegal. So anything it is that they're asking us that is not legal, then we don't have to worry about the obedience in that respect. But anything that is legal, we have to follow their orders. They say, hey, hold an open house every weekend. We're holding the open house every weekend. Another one, so don't forget about this disclosed material defects. That's always in every transaction, every relationship, we always have to disclose material defects despite obedience. So if the seller says, oh, don't tell anybody about the leak under the sink, we still have to disclose that information. It would be illegal for us to follow their orders of not telling people about the leak underneath the sink. So we'd have to disclose that material defect. Even if they say they're going to get it fixed before closing, still got to tell people about it. And when it is fixed, we'll tell them there was a leak under the sink, but it has been fixed. Because that protects us from liability. Not only us, but our seller as well. We don't want to hide that information because the law does require us to disclose that information. As long as we disclose that, and we could prove, we've got that in writing that we disclosed the leak under the sink. If it turns out that there was all kinds of mold under the sink and things like that that resulted because of that leak in the sink, we did our legal obligation of disclosing that. So, sorry, they can't come after us at this point because we disclosed the property defects like we should have. So that's why you wouldn't want to follow that order despite it being illegal, but also because that puts the seller in a position to be liable for any sort of lawsuits by not disclosing material defects, as well as us as well. Our professional license could be on the line for that. The L stands for loyalty. So loyalty, meaning that we give 100% of our loyalty, our full loyalty to our client, whether that's the buyer or the seller, but not both. We give our loyalty to our client, and we're giving them all the loyalty. So what this means is if we're selling the property as a single agent relationship, we've got a listing and we are selling the property, we're offering it for sale, and we have a single agent relationship with the seller, we can't work with anybody else except for as a non-representation. So if anybody wants to come along to us and say, hey, I want to make an offer on the property, when we're in a single agent capacity, and this is only if we're in the single agent capacity, if they want to make an offer on the property, we'd have to say, wait, before I do anything for you, I need you to sign this disclosure to step them down to the no brokerage relationship, that we're not going to be brokering the deal for them, that we're fully loyal still to the seller, and they're basically on their own. We're going to be involved in the transaction for them. We give them the contract. But if they ask us, what price should we pay for this property? Well, figure it out. Figure it out. Asking price is $250,000. Let me know what you want to offer. We can't really do much in the no brokerage relationship, especially when we've given our full loyalty to the single agent. If they ask us how much should I make the offer for? $250,000. That's what the asking price is. Anything less than that might not get accepted. Might not even get accepted at $250,000. Submit your best offer and see. So that's what the loyalty refers to there. They were fully loyal. Because if we gave all of our loyalty to the seller who's trying to get that higher price, we can't give any loyalty whatsoever to the buyer that's trying to get the lower price. That's the arm's length transaction. So that's what loyalty is there. Last one we have is disclosure. So disclosure, anything has to be disclosed. So this one up here is material defects, and that's the one we always have. We always have to disclose material defects. But when we get into a single agent relationship, we now have to disclose all material facts. So the material defects, this is going to be, again, the things broken with the house that's going to cost money to fix. So if there's something broken with the house that's going to cost money to fix, then we would have to disclose that as a material defect. But in the single agency relationship, not only do we have to do that, but everything that's now a material fact, not a material defect, but a material fact. So anything that's relevant to the transaction whatsoever has to be disclosed. So for example, if we know the neighborhood is a high crime rate area, that's not a material defect, but that would be a material fact. It's not something wrong with the property that we're going to have to spend money to fix, like a broken window or a cracked tile or a leak in the roof or something like that. Those are material defects. Maybe the crime rates of the neighborhood, or that we know that the seller maybe is willing to accept a lower price. So if we're a single agent for our buyer and we somehow become aware some way that the seller is willing to take a lower price, we now have a legal obligation to disclose that, which is why you can't represent both sides of the transaction in a single agency relationship, because you now have to disclose everything. And if you have to disclose everything, we can't at the same time still have limited confidentiality with our other client if we have to disclose everything to them. So there's something in a lot of other states, what's called dual agency. In Florida, dual agency is illegal. That's basically having two single agencies. And my interpretation of this is, and I've had debates with people from other states about this as well, but it's also because where, we learn to do business in and how it differs and how we've kind of know the system ins and outs with this. But I like to think that our relationships, the no brokerage transaction, single agent, are a little bit more true to form. Because if we're talking about loyalty here and we want to cover loyalty, how do you give loyalty, full loyalty to somebody that's trying to get the highest price, but at the same time also give loyalty to somebody that wants the lowest price? Who are you loyal to? So the single agency relationship, you're only allowed to be loyal to one. You're either loyal to the seller, trying to get the seller the highest price, or loyal to the buyer, trying to get the buyer the lowest price, or whatever their goals and intentions are in the relationship. That's what you have with loyalty. And there's really no way to kind of split that loyalty up if you're going to be fully loyal. Now, in the transaction broker relationship, there is no loyalty. We're there to get the transaction done. There are certain things that we have to keep confidential, and that's why I prefer the transaction broker relationship. It's the one I would recommend to be used out of all these here. Number one, because there's less duties, there's less legal obligations, because these aren't some things that you should do that would be nice if you did it, that makes you, a good guy or a good girl if you do these things. It's legally required that you perform these four duties of having confidentiality, having obedience, having loyalty, and disclosing all material facts about the property. So these are legal requirements. And that's why if you want to try doing single agency relationships in Florida, I would definitely recommend that you be wary of these here. Because again, this disclosure means everything. And if you forget to disclose something, especially if it's a material defect, because you always have to disclose though, but if you forget to disclose something, even if it was an honest mistake, doesn't matter. You had a legal obligation to disclose that information. So there's a serious level of implication involved when you do a single agency relationship. Now again, in most transactions in Florida, real estate professionals don't use the single agency relationship. It might be due to the disclosure aspect and the liability that brings on. It could be due to the obedience aspect, because a lot of people get the real estate license because they want to be their own boss. They don't want people bossing around, and really our clients a lot of times are our boss. But especially in the single agent relationship, we have obedience for the client. We have to do everything the client asks us that is legal. Whereas the transaction broker relationship that we talked about earlier, we don't have to do everything. Only if we agree to these additional duties do we have to perform them. So if it's something that we know isn't going to be effective, that's not going to help get the property sold or whatever the case may be, especially let's say if the house is located out in the middle of nowhere. It's the middle of nowhere for the house, and the seller's demanding that we do open houses. But there's no cars, no roads for miles. So we know that it's basically pointless to do the open house because there's nobody around, just casually driving through the area. And even if we advertise a little bit, there's not going to be people that want to go way out there. And it might be better for us to advertise in a different way. That's maybe just one scenario. And if that's the case, but if it's a single agent relationship, we still have to do that open house and, figure out a way to make ourselves not bored. But if it were a transaction broker relationship, then we could explain now, I'm not going to do open houses because, and maybe worded a little bit differently. Well, let me tell you why that's not the best idea here, because your location doesn't have a lot of traffic going by. This is very far out and very secluded, so we're probably not going to get any traffic, or if we do get anybody, just a couple of people that show up. So what I recommend is we do this instead. And when you always want to have a solution with all this stuff, and that's not important for these things here, but just important for your business. If you just complain about things, well, your house is out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, complaining about the house's location. Well, there's no traffic that goes by. Okay, yeah, just another complaint. When you're just saying all these things, these are just all complaints. They're still going to want you to do the open house. They don't care if you're going to complain about it. But when you offer another solution instead, you say, well, how about instead of the open house, I'll do this here, and this is going to be so much better that I devote time and energy and attention to this because this, and that, and it'll do this. And they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And we've won them to our side of thinking. But we don't do that by complaining about the open house and hoping that somebody figures something out. We have to be that solution maker. We have to be the one solving these problems. That's a lot of what we do as a real estate professional, is we're putting out fires, solving problems, and stopping the fires before they even start, making sure that the transactions are smooth. And we've got these 3 different relationships to choose from: the no brokerage relationship, the transaction broker relationship, and the single agency relationship. We pick one of those 3, or we just go with the automatically assumed transaction broker relationship. And based on those duties in there, we could always go above and beyond, but we have to, at the very minimum, do what's legally required of these duties. So this is a big topic that you take in the pre-licensing course. If you're already taking the course with us, this is hopefully a good refresher for you on the brokerage relationships. But we do talk about these more in depth in the actual pre-licensing course. This is a big part of that 7% section. So if you're thinking about getting your real estate license, you want to learn more about this, you want to learn more about working with clients, how you could work for them, what it is that you have to do, how you make money with that, you want to take this course. We've got an online course that you can take from anywhere in the world. It's on demand, it's self-paced, and we also have classroom courses throughout the Tampa Bay area. Give us a call and we'll help you make the decision, help you get started with this licensing process. The phone number is 813-928-0106. Again, that's 813-928-0106. We've got advisors standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way it is that they can. So definitely give us a call. It's about all the time we have for today's show. I know we covered a lot. If you do want to rewatch this show, it's going to be available on Facebook as well as YouTube, but the best place to watch it is at tampaschool.com/success. Again, that's tampaschool.com/success. That's our Success Center. Drop your email in there, and whenever it is that we go live, we're going to shoot you an email so you don't miss any of the future episodes of Ask the Instructor or State of Real Estate or any of the great free content that we have to help you understand real estate and make money in real estate. That's our goal. We want to see you be successful. Go to tampaschool.com/success to learn even more. That's all the time we've got for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm John Carissimo. You've been watching Ask the Instructor.
Have you seen what's going on in Tampa?
If you're looking to get in on the real estate action that's going on in Tampa right now, we're who you need to talk to. We can help you get your real estate license, start your real estate career. We're here to assist you for the life of your real estate career. Give us a call. Phone number is 813-928-0106, or check us out online at tampaschool.com. Have you been thinking about starting a career in real estate? Enjoy an entrepreneurial lifestyle that allows for schedule flexibility with unlimited income potential. In real estate, the sky is the limit, and what you put in is what you get out. Learn more about a career in real estate at tampaschool.com. Have you completed your FREC required post-licensing course? There's still time before your next renewal. At the Tampa School of Real Estate, our classroom and online courses will meet your FREC requirement and teach you real-world information applicable to your business. Learn more and enroll today at postflorida.com. That's postflorida.com.
Hey, if you're enjoying the show today, which I'm sure you are, be sure to hit like, subscribe, post your comments, share with your friends and family. Thank you guys so much for watching.